You want to sit there?
So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to the Habibie Center to our Talking ASEAN. My name is Vina. I'm one of the researchers here at the Habibie Center. And for today's Talking ASEAN, we're going to talk the potential roles and challenges of the ASEAN Infrastructure Investment Bank from a first ASEAN perspective. As we all know, the bank is established to support the infrastructure development in Asia-Pacific region, and as of April 15, there are already 57 prospective founding members, and that includes 10 members of ASEAN countries. However, the establishment of the bank has sparked so many debates. There are a lot of pros and cons, and there are also a lot of questions raised after this establishment of the bank, and therefore this Talking ASEAN aims to identify the recent development and the potential roles and also challenges, and to explore potential collaboration between the bank and also ASEAN. So to address all of this issue, I would like to invite three speakers to come forward. Mr. Umar Joro, and Dr. Makmur Kaliat, and also Dr. Maria Monica Wiharja. So I would like to introduce them. Mr. Umar Joro. He is the chairman of the Supervisory Board of Bank Indonesia and also member of Board of Advisor at the Habibie Center. He obtained his master's degree in political economy at Boston University and master's degree in economics at University of Philippines. And Dr. Makmur Kaliat, he is lecturer of IR department at University of Indonesia. He was my lecturer, and previously he was the head of the IR postgraduate program at UI. He obtained his PhD degree in Jawaharlal Nehru University. And Dr. Maria Monica Wiharja, she is the economist of the World Bank Jakarta office. Previously, she was a consultant at Bank Indonesia and she was a researcher at the CSIS. She obtained her PhD degree in regional science from Cornell University. So I think we're going to have an interesting and awesome topic. So now I'm going to invite Mr. Umar Joro first to become the first speaker. So Mr. the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera and good afternoon for all of you, for our distinguished guests here, ladies and gentlemen. ASEAN Infrastructure Investment Bank is a new thing for all of us, including for me, but also very interesting because a lot of promising for this plan to develop sort of kind of like a financial source for investment in infrastructure in Asia, more particularly in ASEAN. Although Ibu Monica will kind of like say something probably, a lot of people say that is this a competitor for World Bank and for the Asian Development Bank? In my view, it could be a competitor, but we look more as a kind of complementary, because the study by Asian Development Bank, and later the Monica may say something about the study by the World Bank, is that $8 trillion needed for the infrastructure development in Indonesia. So that's a huge amount of fund, and often combining the effort from Asian Infrastructure, Asian Development Bank, World Bank, and Asian AIIB would not enough to basically to financing for the infrastructure development. What interesting about AIIB, there's a lot of discussions why China should kind of like park their foreign exchange reserve more than $1 trillion in the US Treasury, particularly without significant return. Why not invest in the area, in the neighbors, where the rate of return is a lot higher. So I think that kind of like important propositions for China to be more active in deploying the equity for the development in Asia. And since this is what really motivated, really encouraged Chinese government, particularly under President Xi Jinping, to develop what they call as Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. The way we look at it is that it's driven mainly by what had been the model for Chinese development, which is along with opening the economy, particularly in trade, investment, facilitating by large development infrastructure. I think probably most of us, or could be all of us, have been in China. How infrastructure was amazing in terms of scale and in terms of also the modern infrastructure like high-speed train and what is this conventional infrastructure like a port, like toll road, and so on. So the way we look at it is this kind of like extensions of this approach into the infrastructure development in the ASEAN in general, of course, particularly in the ASEAN, because by doing that, so China economic development would be enlarged into regional level. Not to mention what other initiatives like Silk Road development plan, or something like that. So this is the way I look at it. So instead of looking at AIIB as a competitor or kind of like a substitute for the World Bank and the ADB, it's more as a complementary. And we'll see how they would do that. But I don't have a doubt. We look in terms of kind of like opportunity of investment, there will be a lot. But again, how this kind of like implementations, that was really kind of like the challenge. And as far as I understood, that China is stated that the equity, the capital that will be deployed in this AIIB will be about $100 billion US. The questions, because this is participations for the member country, that now is assigned a member of understanding. So far is that how many countries? I think it's around 57 countries has been up to the April. It's around 57 prospective founding members have signed it. What interesting is this: it's not only ASEAN countries. That's also Germany, France, UK signed the memorandum of understanding, except Japan and of course the United States. So it the way I look at it, because it's clearly this is about Asia, where Asia is the region with kind of quite consistent high economic growth in the last 3 decades. So it's not just about China, but also the opportunity in Asia. In that sense, it's giving this kind of like Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank is appropriate instead of say Chinese or something like that. So that's attractive not only Asian country but also developed country to participate. Will be interesting how much the contributions of each country for the capital of Asian Infrastructure Bank. The more the capital that it will be able to accumulate it, that will be the higher chance for them to have a strong role, important role, a significant role, particularly in the development of infrastructure in ASEAN. Interesting also that Indonesia is not the 20 countries that signed in 2014 of the Memorandum of Understanding. But when I asked the Minister of Finance, Pak Bambang, they said that at that time is October, there was a time for transitions from SBY to Jokowi. But for Indonesians' point of view, it's clearly Indonesia is committed to participate in this AIIB, So Memorandum of Understanding has signed in Jakarta by Minister of Finance and Pak Dubes here. So Indonesia is a kind of like active members of this AIIB, founding members of the AIIB. But again, how much that kind of like contribute? I don't think Indonesia to contribute for capital will be no more than 100 million or kind of 1 trillion. The thing is that for Indonesia to participate, allocating capital has to be through the budget, through the APBN, has to be approved by the parliament. Even for that one, that's reasons too. For now, Indonesia has not really clearly stated pledge how much Indonesia would participate in contributing capital for the AIIB. So that would be interesting that how other countries would participate too. The more they participate, I think that will be kind of like the more first is not only dominating by China, but also contribution for other countries, and certainly that will be more active in activity, particularly in the development of infrastructure. The benefit is very clear to us. Infrastructure is very much facilitating investment and trade. That's what infrastructure for. But not only that, but infrastructure also supporting poverty elevations and what is this kind of like improving the equality, especially among the regions. That's also the reasons why like country like Indonesia, very significant the differences between the regions with relatively developed infrastructure like in Java and outer island. So what really interesting here is that so much discussions about the economic corridor. Indonesia, we have 6 economic corridor, but unfortunately under President Jokowi, they don't want to use the MP3EI again. They use maritime, but they don't use corridor, so I don't know what maritime something. But there's also discussions about corridor economic development in ASEAN. They talk about this kind of like what is this Mekong area. Then when I was in Thailand, very much the government last year was announced for the development of this kind of like sort of like economic growth center that involving with like Myanmar, with Laos, with other neighboring countries, with Malaysia. So this very much driven by infrastructure, because the idea of a corridor economy that's very catchy in Southeast Asia in particular, and also Asia, is very much driven by infrastructure. But the question here is that the emphasis of the, like what I said in Indonesia, they have a different emphasis where during the SBY, the corridor is mainly emphasis on this toll roads development, and then also port for certain area. But for the Jokowi administration, it's more on the maritime, which actually is the same. Anyway, maritime is very much about port. So, but we are a democratic country, so new government would like to have a different name and different emphasis. Then, of course, that private participation will be very important here, because no matter how this kind of like multilateral agency or the what is this government in the infrastructure development is not going to be enough. So public-private partnership, this is very important for the development of the infrastructure in Asia. China itself is actually showing an example about not only the government. What interesting, what I learned in China infrastructure is that actually infrastructure there is not really developed by the budget of the government, but through the state-owned enterprises, whether this is kind of national or as well as local, and some area, many areas through the public-private partnership. Is this kind of like a model that will be developed? I think so, but we will discuss later on that if this kind of like state-owned enterprises that involved in implementing this infrastructure development, particularly finances by AIIB. So there's also questions about accountability and governance that we will discuss later on. So it's clearly, this is the data from the Economic World Economic Forum, so that Asia is still, it's not bad in terms of like logistic performance index, infrastructure in general, but still a lot of things has to do to get to the level, the maximum index is 5. That's only Singapore that get 4.19. Of course Japan, but we are not really kind of particularly in that. Like country like Indonesia, still about 3 out of the 5 index. So there's kind of like still a lot of things to do in the logistic in general, in infrastructure particular. And we could see that what I just mentioned, next one, this is studied by the Asian Development Bank, more or less in Asia for 2010-2020, need about 8 trillion, what is this, US dollar to financing infrastructure, in energy, telecommunications, transport, and also water and sanitation. The largest one that would go to the energy sector. We know this is kind of like when you see like many Asian countries, especially the relative underdeveloped one like Myanmar or Laos, Cambodia, that the problem will be more severe. Even like in Indonesia, when you go outside Java, in Sumatra, the brownout is very often happen. Like what recently now in Bintan. So people demonstrated because the electricity is basically kind of like on and off very often. I myself was in also in a private bank that we are very active, Indonesian bank, to finance the power plant, for instance, but still not be able to catching up the demand. So it's still very hard. And also when we talk about the things like, for the example, what the problem that we have faced in Batam, the capacity is only running at 50%. And then in West Java, for instance, that what is this? The development of the new power plant. I think it's about do by something 100 megawatt. It's a problem with land acquisition, which is not supposed to happen. So again, in terms of financing need, it's really a big amount of money there. So that's I emphasize again, there should be kind of like complementary, where it's kind of like ADB, World Bank, or the AIIB, because the need is a really big number. And for ASEAN itself, there will be more than 1 trillion for the period about 10 years. So that's a large amount. But very strong correlations. A lot of study has been done. There's strong correlations between infrastructure and economic growth. So, but of course, for the relatively underdeveloped, the correlation will be a lot lower. That's another challenge, because for Indonesia itself, for like a toll road, when we enforce the toll road in Java, the rate of return could be like 18, 20, something like that. But outside Java, what now is on the process of development for the toll road Trans Sumatra, the rate of return will be around 8%. So no private sector interested to go there. So you see here, that's really a challenge in ASEAN in particular for developing infrastructure that with relatively low rate of return. If they have kind of like high rate of return, particularly in urban areas, private sector will be very interested. The question is that how the project will be set up and how the financing kind of like being provided. This is the, before this one, this is the study for the from the ADB. We could see that Indonesia required highest, 150 billion. And then we see other countries like Malaysia about 185, Cambodia about Thailand about 173. So when you see that one, of course, that what really kind of like interested in terms of the economic benefit is clearly into the core of ASEAN, like Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and also Philippines, to kind of like get direct correlations between investment in infrastructure and economic growth, and then come to the other underdeveloped. Even like the case for Indonesia, that we also have to look where the area would be. This is really challenge. For now, for instance, in Indonesia, is that the administrations of Jokowi said that if you want to invest in Indonesia, you should go to outside Java. But again, how do you develop infrastructure outside Java if the rate of return is relatively low? So in that sense, then the government give a kind of like better message now. They said we will give you in the area where the height of return is relatively high for the private investment. Then let the government would invest outside Java, especially where the rate of return is relatively low. So that would kind of like, in my view, apply for other ASEAN countries or Asia in general, because for the infrastructure development in relatively underdeveloped, that has to be mainly the job of the government, not the private sector. In general, that's what I kind of like. This is just kind of like looking how contribution for one of the other project. So it's clearly, I would just kind of summarize this, that in my view, the AIIB is given a benefit for ASEAN. It's clearly with the economic growth average about 5% or more. With the more infrastructure, the potential growth would be achievable by most of the ASEAN countries, particularly the core ASEAN countries. Then also the AIB would be able to participate in active role in what we call as ASEAN Economic Community that run in 2015 forward. So the other notes that we have to kind of like look closely is that you know, the AIB, the last slide, is very much involving many countries. So far it's 57. How the coordination? So far I haven't have really kind of like a clear idea. Is that going to work like the ADB or World Bank? They would contribute more. They would have what is this higher votes or other thing that they would do. So that's kind of like important thing, because this is would kind of like really making whether this participations of 57 countries would be kind of like synergized, or will be also a quarrel in terms of who will have more say in this AIIB. Whether it will be set up like say State Bank probably, or the way China do, we have to see about this coordinations, organization will be set up in a clear manner. And then certainly that's identifications and prioritization of viable project. In my view is that we look at this AIB is very much on the investment and trade for economic development. So we look more into the project that relatively have height of return, so then attracted also the private sector in the public-private partnership, or fully private like BOT or other scheme. While the underdeveloped areas remain the main responsibility of each government. Then standard regulatory policies and legal framework, that's very important. It's very well known here. I think many of you recall the fast track, the 10,000 megawatt project under the SBY first administrations. Practically, this is in China, and they bid very low in terms of what is this cost of the project. even without any guarantee, but when they want it, they push the government, because unlike the French or unlike the German or the Americans, this is very integrated. So the presidents say, the prime minister say, and also the state-owned enterprises to push for certain project. So all of us know that the 10,000 megawatt project is very much financed by China at that time, still not didn't run quite well. So that's kind of like an experience. But of course, there will be a lot of improvement, especially how the AIB will be implemented. But on that particular thing, we have to kind of like give the emphasis here. So the participations of developed countries like Germany, France, and so on will be very important, not just in terms of capital, financial capital, but also in the standard regulatory legal framework. So that will be kind of like level playing field in the way that the AIB is going to work. And certainly capacity building, especially for if the project is run in the relatively underdeveloped, encouraging private sector participations, social and environmental problems, because we don't want to kind of like develop infrastructure without really kind of like considering environment issues or social. This is what the criticism to MP3EI, because not really with kind of like major highway development in Sumatra, Kalimantan, and so on. It's not really considered about the environment and social, which kind of like create the significant environment impact and also aggravate the inequality. Then governance, that's related to what I said about regulatory policy, because governance is certainly in the institution of AIB itself, how the government is going to work, whether this kind of like accountable and transparent organizations like what we know in the other organizations, or at least now the benchmark is ADB and the World Bank, or that will be a Chinese way to do things. This is what kind of like really concerns that we have for this. But after all, overall, the AIB is very much give a lot of promise and encouraging, and for that one is ASEAN, in my view, is very much participating for that one, and particularly Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Since you just mentioned about the standard, should the bank has the same standard with the ADB and the World Bank and IMF, or should it build another standard like suit best the region?
For me, it's the standard. For the example about the vote, it doesn't have to be kind of like a capital contributions. So it's kind of like more participation. Always the complaint for the especially for the World Bank is dominated by United States or developed country in particular. So for the AIIB, they can have kind of like more participating. So this kind of like in terms of like the potential for the country to have say more vote in terms of decisions in AIIB. That would be kind of like a new model.
Thank you once again, Pak Omar. So now this takes us to our second speaker, Dr. Maria Monica Liardia.
I think I'm going to say maybe a bit similar things, so just adding some things to Pak Omar's talk just now. So I guess right now, like like everybody's just putting their eyes and ears on this new Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. And why do we need this? I agree completely with Pak Omar's argument. So there's no questions that, in my opinion, that we need this new investment bank, and it's not a substitute to the existing multilateral financial institutions, but more of a complement, just because of the size of the financing needs that the region needs. So why do we need this Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, I think, well, the first is that the global economy is giving a signs of slowing down, if not stagnating, and we need a new engine of growth. And this has been reiterated many times in the past G20 summit, that one of the main drivers of the new main drivers of global growth should be coming from infrastructure development and infrastructure investment. I happen to be involved in the past 3 years, in the past activities of the G20 for the past 3 years, and I have to say that Indonesia is one of the main countries that has been sort of provocating the G20 to focus on infrastructure investment. So there's no question that Indonesia is a champion of this new infrastructure investment bank. One of the ideas behind why globally and the Asian region needs to focus on infrastructure investment, as I said, as a new engine of growth, but also because in the Asian region there's a tendency to have an excess saving. So if you look at China's international reserve, it's mostly invested in, say, like the treasury bill or treasury notes in the US. So most of the excess savings in the Asian regions go to the advanced countries, especially the US. But then it comes back again to the Asian region. So why not, instead of like going back and forth, why not we recycle these excess savings within the region? So that's one of the ideas why China and other Asian countries want its own infrastructure investment bank, so that the excess savings that the Asian region has can be recycled within the region instead of going to the advanced country and going back to the region. And also IMF has estimated that the multiplier of infrastructure investment in developing economies is 1.6. So that means for 1% increase in infrastructure investment, increased growth by 1.6%. So that's a big multiplier effect on growth. And another reason why it's a good time to invest in infrastructure now is because of the low interest rate environment today. So if we look at what happens after the global financial crisis, advanced countries are basically raising down in terms of lowering their interest rate. So essentially, we can say that the cost of financing infrastructure now is low. So so it's a good timing to invest in infrastructure. And as Pak Umar already said, there's a need to fill in the financing gap on infrastructure. I won't repeat the number, but yes, it's the Asian region, for example, requires around $8 trillion US dollar to be invested from 2010 to 2020, and also the world's GDP has grown significantly. So since the Bretton Woods era, when there were only a couple of international financial institutions, so the world GDP has multiplied by 7 to 8 times. So you can imagine now we need more than just 1 or 2 international multilateral financial institutions. So any new bank or activities to finance infrastructure or development will be welcome. And moreover, the World Bank and ADB have moved towards concessional lending and knowledge bank. So they mostly lend to more conservative projects. And I believe that this new AIIB will be focusing more on private infrastructure investment, so private lending on commercially viable projects. In 2012 to 2011 to 2012, net commercial lending by multilateral development banks was negative. That means member countries are just paying interest to these multilateral development banks instead of the other way around, instead of multilateral development banks lend to member countries. So again, it's a clear sign that there's a need for more commercial lendings. Also, after the global financial crisis, the crisis itself and the new regulatory financial reform reduced many of banks' capacity to lend, including those for infrastructure. And moreover, pension fund, insurance, and mutual funds have not filled in this gap. The allocation of infrastructure debt is less than 1% compared to 12% previously in banks globally. And also, why China really pushed for this new investment bank is because of the stalled international financial institution reform. So the IMF governance and voting share reform, for example, has been stalled because the U.S. Congress has not ratified the reform. And you can imagine how China is very frustrated with the stalled international financial institution reform. China really wants to reflect the change in the economic position for countries, especially emerging countries globally. The voting share of countries like China, Brazil, or Indonesia in existing multilateral development bank is less than the share of the size of their economies, because the shares were established 50 years ago during the Bretton Woods era. And also, if you look at China's overseas direct investment, since 2014, China is a net capital exporter. So their outward investment is already bigger than their inward investment. And China has become the 6th largest provider of foreign aid, 3rd biggest investor in ASEAN after the EU and Japan. Another reason why we need this investment bank, in particular on infrastructure investment, is because we need to connect the Asian region better. So right now, if we want regional integration, the tariff barrier is already very low. So what we need right now is more of the physical connectivity. About the structure of the new about AIIB. AIIB is supposed to invest in infrastructure financing in the Asian region and to lend on a commercial basis. Supposedly, it's a democratic decision-making structure with 57 founding members right now. All ASEAN countries are part of the founding members. And the weight of shares of AIIB will be determined by the size of the economy. But it's still not yet decided whether or not it's going to be 100% based on the size of the economy. For example, like some of the Asian countries thinks that 75% of the shares should be on the Asian countries, and the 25% should be the non-Asian countries. But all in all, China will have a large share but no veto power. China previously accounts for 49% of decision-making power, but this will be reduced with major countries joining AIIB. Asian countries will have majority voting rights. The difference in the governance of AIIB and the existing multilateral financial institutions is that AIIB may not have the so-called resident boards of directors who sit in the headquarters every day. So AIIB wants to run like a corporation where the board usually just establishes the rules and policies to give guidance to the president, but let the management run the organization on a daily basis. So they don't want any board of directors to be running and managing the daily activities. If successful, AIIB will lend about $20 billion a year, almost like the World Bank. And the founding members will initially pay up to 1/5 of the 50 billion authorized capital, which will eventually be raised to 100 billion. And Philippines, for example, may contribute up to 900 million, so that's quite large. I don't know yet how much Indonesia will actually contribute. Again, is IIB a complement or substitute to the existing multilateral development bank? The World Bank and ADB do lending across a broad spectrum, so it's not specific to infrastructure like AIIB. It lends to a lot of social programs, for example, building irrigation, rural roads, and so on. But AIIB is designed to support a more focused project, especially big-scale infrastructure project like toll road, bridges, power plants, and so on. So, and also as I mentioned earlier, that the demand for financing infrastructure is so huge that any few multilateral development bank could not provide. So the more activities and the more new banks to finance infrastructures, the better. Now AIIB has something to do with the so-called the Chinese dream or the Asian century. AIIB is closely linked to the China's One Belt and One Road development strategy. You may have heard of New Silk Road economic belt that wants to link China with Europe through Central and Western Asia. So there's I saw a website where there's actually a railroad link going from China to I think London through Western and Central Asia. It's a real path that you can actually take. And you may also have heard of the 21st century maritime Silk Road that wants to connect China with Southeast Asia, Africa, and Europe. There's already the Silk Road Fund, which China contributed 40 billion, and the new BRICS Development Bank. Also, ASEAN Master Plan on Connectivity to make Kunming the gateway of Southeast Asia with railway network. And recently, I also read an article on the Kra Channel, canal, a deep water canal cutting through Thai's Long Peninsula to link the Indian Ocean with the South China Sea. It's a 10-year project at the cost of 21 billion, and it will be financed. So Thailand and China just signed an MOU to build this new canal. So you can imagine that if everything works, then this will seem to be the Asian century, with China connects to many parts of the world. And also, I think AIIB also may change the geopolitics. So you see that UK joins the bank, the AIIB, and that may give some political reconciliation between the UK and China. Also, it challenges the US leadership. So it gives a sense, although I said like it's not a substitute or a competition between the existing multilateral development bank, but there's a sense of challenging the US leadership. And also, I think with all the ASEAN countries as part of the founding members, it also brings countries in the South China Sea dispute together. Challenges for AIIB, quality borrowing. So World Bank and Asian Development Banks never have a default. So AIIB also have to make sure that its loans will be repaid. Otherwise, it will have a hard time borrowing from the capital market, and the interest rate of the bond that AIIB sells will be too high. Governance, transparency, and accountability. It's also a challenge for AIIB, given that some of the China's bilateral infrastructure development project is already giving some alarming sign in terms of China's transparency and accountability and quality of the project. Since 2014, China has become a net capital exporter, as I mentioned earlier. China's domestic return in infrastructure has been declining, with investment already makes up about 50% of the GDP, of China's GDP. But China's overseas direct investment involve mostly state-owned enterprise, and more than half of the deals does not return sufficient financial returns. China's state-owned enterprise do not have to shoulder any responsibility when the transactions fail. So that's a challenge to have quality projects for AINB. But the other 56 founding members, including developed countries like Germany and UK, will have to ensure that good governance, transparency, and accountability are maintained. And I think it's one of the last challenge of AINB is that to manage competition. So we should not see AIIB and other existing multilateral development bank to be racing to the bottom, but instead they should continue to maintain quality. Okay, maybe I stop there.
Thank you, Dr. Maya Monica. Now we move on to our last speaker, Leah, please.
Thank you very much for Habib Center for inviting me to be here today. And I have PowerPoints, 10 slides, if I'm not mistaken. And I have been asked to talk about the potential roles and challenges of the ASEAN Infrastructure Investment Bank. And I already told Vina that I have tried to find the original document draft, but I failed, but I have now. So my presentation is mainly on the basis of a secondary resources, not on the basis of original document. The countries have discussed. I have a document, but I cannot, I mean from the government document, but it is not the original document of the draft itself. So I like to what called to emphasize that point first. So my presentation is, next please, the structure of my presentation is divided into 3 parts. The first part try to highlight the stages for institutional development of the Asia Infrastructure Development Bank, and then the second part is trying to identify crucial issues what has raised in the what you call in the negotiation stage. We call it this the stage for institutional arrangement and what we call the issue of political economy. And the third part is on potential roles and challenges. Let us talk about stages for institutional development. I divided this stage into 3 parts. The first part is consultation and commitment. We call it pre-negotiation. And the second part is negotiation itself. It is going on now. And the third part is operational, and it will start after the end of this year. The first step next. What I have got so far is that the first stage is very much colored by initiative taken by China. There is a mechanism, we call it multilateral consultation meeting between prospective founding members, and Indonesia has become the founding members. And the document that has been produced from this first step is what we call it Memorandum of Understanding. Indonesia already signed it. I think the last meeting between Pak Jokowi and Xi Jinping, the document has signed it. And according to the report, newspaper report, total commitment for what we call it founding members or prospective founding members become more than 40 countries. And now the second stage. The second stage can also be called as a negotiation or preparatory talk. And actually the focus is on elaboration of the article of agreement. Next, please. Next, please. No. 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 Next, please. Next. Actually, the structure of article of agreement consists of 11 parts. We have about the purpose, function, and membership, capital, operational, finance, governance, and that's all. But I do not find the initial document or the original document. So it is difficult to give a criticism or to give what they call highlight. Back, please. Again. Okay. So mechanism is through what we call it chief negotiators meeting. I think there are 2 persons from Indonesia who have participated in the meeting, and both them are from the Ministry of Finance. I think I have the name actually, but I don't remember now. But you can ask later on. I can find the document, the name of the persons. And the rounds of meeting of chief negotiators have taken place for 4 times, and it is going to be held for the 5th times, if I'm not mistaken, by the end of this month. And the focal point of the meeting is under the responsibility of Ministry of Finance. So when I asked the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ibu Retno, could you provide me the information about the AAB? And she said that it is under the responsibility of Ministry of Finance. So there is a separation of tasks. So it is under the responsibility of Ministry of Finance. And it is expected that the final document of articles is expected to be signed by in June. And next, and the third step is I think it starts from June to December. The main focus is how to get legal approval at the national level, especially from the legislative, from the legislative institution. And it is expected that the operation of the AAB will start at by the end of this year or the early of next year. Next. So crucial issue. In my understanding, there are 2 categories. There are 2 crucial issues that we could highlight. The first issue is related to institutional setup or institutional arrangement, and the second one is related to political economic issues. Let us talk about the institutional arrangement. I think the first is the term ASEAN. How do we define ASEAN? The document I have collected so far shows that the consensus is on the basis of definition made by United Nations. So if you look at the category of United Nations, then we'll find the category of Central Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia, and West Asia. So that is the definition of ASEAN. It is important to have that definition in order to make a differentiation between the nature of membership, because regional membership, I mean ASEAN, will have a different treatment compared to non-ASEAN membership. I think Monica has told us that 70% of the capital contribution will come from the ASEAN membership. It is impossible for non-regional member to give more than 30%. And share of capital. The next crucial issue is on share of capital. as I told earlier, that there is a different treatment between regional and non-regional member, and also how to make a basis of a contribution. It should be based on the size of GDP or on the basis of population. It has not been clear so far, and also how to pay the what they call the contribution. Should the contribution be paid in an installment, and if it is installment, then for how long? There is a idea that for the small country, the way to pay the installment need to be done after the establishment of the institution. I mean, after it comes into force. But there is another proposal also that it should be paid 6 months after the effectiveness of the institution. And about the loan facility, should the AAB give loan facility only for non-member, or for the only for regional member or non-regional member also? And also the issue of technical assistance for non-member. Indonesia actually, in my understanding, tried to raise the issue that the technical assistance for non-member countries is permitted. And on the issue of currency, what kind of currency we need to use for the running of the institution, and on the issue of a structure of board of governors and board of directors, and then on the issue of regional branch office, Indonesia has raised the idea that we need to have a regional branch office in Jakarta. The headquarters remains in Beijing, I think, but the regional branch office is in Jakarta. And next, a political economy. I think the question we need to raise here is what has motivated China to take initiative to establish the IAB. I think I have 3 reasons. The first one is related to the achievement of the country. I think China now is one of the largest exporting country, and it has accumulated huge foreign reserve, and because of that, there has been a pressure for yuan appreciation, and that need to be channeled back to outside China. And as Ibu Monica has told us that initially that money has been invested in a security market, like buying bonds and so on. And now there is another option where they can invest the money into a real sector, that is infrastructure development. So the second reason is there is a conviction that the economic growth of China will be difficult to sustain in the years to come if infrastructure deficit takes place in Asia. According to ADB report, I think a huge money is needed for ASEAN infrastructure development between 2010 up to 2020. The figure I got is 8 trillion, but I read in your paper is 1 trillion. I don't know.
So it's the same.
Same, 8 trillion. So huge money we need to make infrastructure development. And 3 years ago, actually I and FINA conducted a research on infrastructure development, and we find that actually China has made a great achievement in infrastructure development. If I'm not mistaken, it has become 8% of GDP has been allocated to infrastructure development. But in the case of Indonesia, I think less than 2% for the last 10 years. So, and China has set the target to increase the ratio into 15% for the next 20 years. So there is a gap between China and ASEAN country insofar as infrastructure development is concerned. So the third one is because there is a need for China to counter criticism. China has been focused on FTA like regional trade. So by proposing the idea of ASEAN Infrastructure Bank, then China tried to give impression that they go beyond trade. So they need to kind of to show the public that they have a regional responsibility. And I think China also has learned very clearly from what United States and Japan has done, that they can exercise their rising power through institutions. So by establishing a new organization, there's a possibility for China to exercise its power without giving what we call a very the criticism from outside. So this is the important thing, and I would like to emphasize another point is that actually under the G20 mechanism, there is an agenda for infrastructure development, but in my understanding, it is only on a policy dialogue. So I think China has taken a very progressive step, because they have made infrastructure development not only at the level of policy dialogue, but they have come with the real policy by establishing the IIB. So two steps further compared to G20. And let us talk about the political economy. The question we need to raise here: why Japan and the US have not given a supportive response to the idea? In December last year, I went to Japan and under international exposure program, and I made a dialogue with a number of strategic thinkers. And I asked the question: why Japan does not give us a positive response to the idea of IIB? And the response I've got is three reasons. The first reason is they have a kind of conviction that China does not have a tradition for transparency and governance in the financial sector. So they don't have a strong conviction that China can run that kind of lending institution at the international level. And the second reason is they don't have it is difficult for Japan to understand why do we need to have AAB at the same time we have a ASEAN Development Bank. So they fear that there is a kind of redundancy between ASEAN Infrastructure Bank and Asian Development Bank. And the third reason, I think, because the US has not taken stance on that issue, and in my understanding, the focus of US so far is on TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, not on the issue of infrastructure development, and TTIP on Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership with the EU. So the question then is, could we imagine that Asian Infrastructure Bank exists without the presence of Japan and China? I think this is a very intriguing question. And the last part is on potential role and challenges. The potential, I think, of course, there's high potential role for infrastructure development because we have more resources now. Mobilization of resources is better. In the case of Indonesia, I think we have policy priority on infrastructure development. So we have more resources now. But again, there is a need for role differentiation between ADB and AAB, at least to minimize the issue of redundancy. And I think the potential will become higher if Japan and the US can take part in the AAB. And challenges. I think challenges will come after June. at the national level, we need to have what you call endorsement from the legislature. So if everything goes well, then after June, from June to December, there is a need what called political process at the parliamentary institution. And at the regional level, I think how to match the idea of ASEAN Infrastructure Bank with the ASEAN agenda of regional economic integration in Southeast Asia, especially with the issue of interconnectivity. Could ASEAN use the idea of, could use IAB for strengthening the interconnectivity of ASEAN? And the third point at the public level is how to deal with the issue of transparency and governance. And the fourth challenges is on mechanism for evaluation of policy objective. My fear is that we only evaluate the achievement of the blended institution from the output, not from the outcome of the people surrounding the project. So I think there is a need to give what you call the evaluation. And I think that's all I can contribute my academic perspective to our discussion today. Thank you very much.
I'm just wondering, can we expect that ASEAN can play a major role in shaping the AIP?
I think a very limited role. My suggestion is better for ASEAN to focus on how to to facilitate the idea of ASEAN Economic Community after the year 2015. There is a kind of a great challenges within ASEAN itself. So rather than talking about taking a bigger role at the ASEAN level.
Okay. Thank you. Now I'm going to open the question and answer session. If you want to ask, please raise your hand and my colleague will pass you the mic. Please mention your name and institution. Okay. I will take 3 questions first. Azza and Guy.
Hello. Thank you very much for the panelists. Great speeches, and I learned a lot. This is Yoshifumi Fukunaga from ASEAN Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. I have many questions, but I'll limit it to 2. The first one is about the domestic. In the last slide, there's a line saying that one of the challenges ahead is domestic approval process in Indonesia, and I want to know more about it. In the Suharto era, we relied so much on the development funding, finance from overseas, right, other countries, and we still have some hesitance to overly rely on the borrowing from other countries. So whether there are some worries in the Congress, how we can address this. That's the first question. The second question is about ASEAN. If we were to hold this conference 2 years ago, before the AIIB came out, and talk about how to finance the connectivity, the answer at the time was ASEAN Infrastructure Fund, right?
Yeah.
We have a ASEAN thing, and nobody talks about it. Nobody mentions it today. So to me, like, ASEAN probably had a chance to provoke for something like AIIB, like an ASEAN-led fund for Asian infrastructure. Apparently, we failed for this, right? With the very limited funding and low visibility. So how does this affect the ASEAN's, visibility, ASEAN's capacity to form the regional agendas in infrastructure development? That's the second question. That's the first. I think any panel can address these questions.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Aziza from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. My question would be, first, I heard that Okay, so Ms. Maria, you mentioned about the concept of China's new maritime Silk Road and the One Belt policy things. And regarding to that matter, do you think that it feels like Indonesia is now, not Indonesia particularly, but the other member of AIIBs, like it feels like we are helping China to making their dreams come true? And do you agree with that? And what do you think the other Western countries might see about these things? And then the other things is, if I may, another question, Pak Makmur, you mentioned about the crucial things. So looking at those crucial things, do you think we are actually, I mean, AIIB is actually ready to accommodate ASEAN? ASEAN needs, especially with the ASEAN Community 2015 deadline is coming on December. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Billy from Solidarity Center. My question is directed to Mr. Umar and Pak Makmur. Yeah, it shows that China especially is very ambitious in this kind of development perspective, and other ASEAN countries are drawn into it. But now it is still in the process of preparation, negotiation. I just would like to ask if the panelists have ever found any safeguard standards that have been especially related to environmental and social safeguard standards in their preparation discussions. Otherwise, we are talking of development, but we further damage the environment and other social issues. Yeah, like World Bank is now also in the process of reviewing its safeguard standard. So if it is AIIB with this very ambitious tendencies, if this important aspect is taken into account, because China is not only here in Asia, but also in Africa and South American regions, in its role in the BRICS, rather. So last February I was involved in a workshop or seminar in Johannesburg, and the participants expressed their concern about this environment and social damage in the infrastructure development plans. Thank you.
I think we now will answer the three questions first. Now the first. Okay, now for question number 1, Pak Makmur.
On the issue of domestic approval, I think my suggestion is there is a need for public discussion and public debate after June. I mean, after the article of agreement, the final document of article of agreement has been produced. So I think, like what we are doing now, it needs to be what we call multiply, and we get the input. And the second thing we can do is to approach the member of parliament to have also to be involved also in the discussion. But despite all these suggestions, I strongly believe that there would not be a what we call a strong opposition from the parliament. because there is a national consensus. I think the importance of infrastructure development. Whether you are requesting or you have a kind of belief that there is a need strong intervention of the state or less intervention of the state, but the most important thing is you need to have an infrastructure in order to accelerate growth. So that is the consensus, I think. The second point is on ASEAN and AIB on the issue of interconnectivity. I think the main problem is that ASEAN has a very unique principle. If you look at to the charter of ASEAN, then you will find that the contribution of ASEAN member countries should be based on a principle of equal contribution. So it is difficult to have a huge financial resources if that principle is applied. So I think if you look at to the experience of the establishment of a lending institution at the international level, then we find that the contribution is not based on the principle of equality. So the larger and the stronger economy will give more. So I think this is the first problem. And the second problem is actually the issue of East Asia, infrastructure development have also been raised long time back. I remember in the year 2005 when I was still active in what we call East Asia community. China has raised the idea of having East Asia investment bank, but that idea was responded negatively by Japan, and there was no consensus also between ASEAN countries. And later on, in the year 2012, I think, or in the year 2013, that idea raised again, but in a different name. We call it Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. So, from that experience, I came to realize that if we are talking about the contribution, then there is no consensus, a strong consensus among ASEAN countries so far. And on the issue of the yes, I think as I told you earlier that it is better for ASEAN to focus more on the agenda of how to what they call to finalize the target of East ASEAN community, ASEAN economic community by the end of this year, rather than trying to have what they call bigger role at the ASEAN level. So I think this is my view on that issue, and it seems to me that insofar as a relation between China and ASEAN, there is no very substantial divergent views between among ASEAN countries, unless on the issue of territorial dispute in the South China Sea. But insofar as the issue of economic relationship, I think there has been a strong consensus between ASEAN countries that China is very important, has played an important role in Southeast Asia. And on the issue of China ambition, my response is like this: if you are internationalist, then you will encourage China to establish institution. By having institution, then we can control China with a certain mechanism, because there is a rule, there is a procedure and mechanism. So, but if you don't believe in a view of internationalism, then it is difficult to counter China. And I think if you are realist, then it is a normal that the stronger you are, then the more power you have, the more say you have at the international level. So I think it is a natural consequences if China has a greater ambition, because economically China has become stronger. So it is a normal process. My understanding and my view is Japan is not normal, I mean quote unquote, because it has economic power, but on the basis of constitution, China does not have authority to have a military force. So that is not normal in my understanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Ahmad. Would you like to answer question number 1 and 3?
Yes, Pak Yusufuni, on the way that the domestic to contribute for this AIIB, of course, we now is standardized. Any contributions of Indonesian's government into the international organization has to put in the budget, APBN, and then approved by the parliament. Even like when 3 years ago, it's a small amount actually, just several million US dollar contribution Indonesia for the Syariah Economic Board in Kuala Lumpur, that to be discussed in the parliament too. So that's the thing. But we know that in what is this APBN 2015, the budget 2015 under SBY, there was no this one. And remember at the time, if I'm not mistaken, this Pak Mahendra is the one I talked to him too, is the Indonesians official who involved in this AIIB. There was none there in the APBN 2015, and the APBN P 2015 under this Pak Jokowi and the Minister of Finance Bambang. I thought that would be kind of like submitted because they're serious about this kind of like the amount, but that was not there either because this is new administrations, and the IIB also is not really kind of like clear yet. So is it going to be put in the budget 2016? I think so, yeah, because otherwise when Indonesia would kind of like make clear contributions. But to me it's very clear in terms of the payment would not be in a one time. There will be installments. So at that time there was discussions about the contributions about 1 trillion rupiah, 100 million. So there will be a 3 years. I don't think there will be more than, at most there will be a contribution for Indonesia. If I kind of like make a judgment, assessments about the conditions, political economic conditions, will be at most will be around 300 million. 3 trillion lah more or less in the Indonesian standard because we are in accounting in rupiah. If that kind of like Ibu Monica was called, we use the information in Thailand, which is Philippines will contribute 900 million. That will be look upward for Indonesia. Because for the GDP we are the largest, population we are the largest, and President Xi Jinping is very much have attention in Indonesia. When he marching on what is this Jalan Merdeka in Bandung with President Jokowi and Ibu Megawati, and President Xi Jinping, but there was no Prime Minister of Japan in the other. And then Indonesia doesn't contribute less than the Philippines. And when you look in the Philippines, the contributions of the China, what is this kind of like involvement, especially in infrastructure, it's not compared to Indonesia. And Pak Makmur said about that. I just coming from the Philippines. What is this? 3 days ago, and I didn't see this kind of like a Chinese there, like in Indonesia, or the power plant and so on. It's mainly the Koreans and Japanese there. So and they kind of like a lot of people in Cebu talking about this kind of like China Philippine conflict with this Spratly Island because that's very close to Samar, which is near to Cebu too. So that would be quite interesting if the Philippines make a pledge 900 million, Indonesia with 300. So that's come into this kind of like how these things of this kind of like structure of voting and so on will be kind of like decided in the AIB. Again, in terms of mechanism, is clear. In some extent, I also agree with Pak Makmur. I don't think there will be a lot of resentment because at that time when what's the President Xi Jinping or the chairman of the Congress when give a speech at the Parliament, the members of Parliament are very happy. I didn't ask, and they talked to me about that kind of thing. Well, we are here with the China leader. So the problem is the amount. One, like that's what I said. My estimation should not be more than 300 million US dollar. And then second is that that's always the Parliament. Although in our tax system we don't pay, for example, a tax for a gasoline has to go for the environment. But when it comes into the kind of like a budget thing, allocations of budget, they may ask, if you contribute that amount, how much of value of the infrastructure project that we get from AIB? That will be long debate. So that would be interesting to do that. So, but I don't think even in 2016 they will kind of like give this more than 100 commitment. Also considering that who will be the Minister of Finance do not guess too. There's a lot of talk that there will be a cabinet reshuffle. So that's kind of like other aspect that we have to look. Usually that's the problem is that it's not really kind of like a continuations, you know, in the kind of like a process of this kind of like a participation thing. Still kind of like need a key person who, especially the Ministry of Finance, would keep it up on that one. Then also bringing in, of course, to the presidents and to the parliament. On the ASEAN itself, we talk about AIIB and ASEAN, but the way I look at it is it's very much China and 57, what is this kind of like founding members, something like that. So the way I look at it, the approach of China is not through ASEAN, although we have ASEAN-China Free Trade Agreement, but this is Indonesia, Philippines, Cambodia, and so on. So that's again, that would be interesting the way that we look at it. I don't think it would kind of like reflecting the regional arrangements with the ASEAN or even because the way I look at it is more kind of like a single member, like what we practice in the other multilateral agency instead of a regional thing. And also, doesn't to me, I mean, Pak Makmur is more experts on the foreign relations and on the economy, but I don't see that Jokowi is, and Ibu Retno is very much emphasis about core-centric of ASEAN like before. It's well, really interesting. This is also infrastructure thing. It will be really interesting how in Indonesia the implementations between the participation of China and participation of Japan in the practical infrastructure. Because it's very common here, even during the SBY time, with this kind of like more tension between Japan and China. Indonesian leaders say, oh, I would like to kind of like, I remember at the time we were discussing with President SBY, said, which one that you take a side? No, we don't want to take a both side. We want to benefit from the other, both sides. We don't take any one side. But SBY is more kind of like in strategic and visionary. But SBY is somebody, as Jokowi is somebody who kind of like make decision. Although after that, sorry, I have to check my decisions because I don't read the letter. I sign it, but I have to revise it. I do the same thing too. So that will be interesting because several projects that have been discussed with Japanese, for instance, is also with China. And I follow closely the project of this ASEAN II, ASEAN III. What's quite interesting about how here, between the central government, local government, Japan and China, that's another dynamic that we see. But again, this thing is, I don't see that China will approach, as far as China is concerned, to say AIB, the initiative, looking at ASEAN. That would be more what's kind of like individual country. Now the question is that there's an initiative, a corridor, for instance, ASEAN corridor, or whatever, MECOM, or any other kind of like initiative. The question is whether this kind of like countries get involved, like Thailand and Myanmar or Burma, Myanmar, Malaysia, they together to kind of like propose that project into AIB. That's the questions to me. But still, I look at it kind of like more into what is this kind of like single country, and more particularly, I kind of like in line with Ibu Monica, it's more into kind of like viable project in the sense of economic and business. On this environment field, so our colleague from the Solidarity Center, I think that was the real issue beside the governance, because when you go to Beijing, I surprised myself how the pollution would be. That's what I would imagine for the 10,000 megawatt project in Indonesia and 35,000 megawatt project now under this Jokowi, because mainly the project is very much on the power plant, and power plant is very much on what is this, coal driven, and with the low coal now. But interestingly, China is basically very limiting the export coal, particularly Indonesia, for low calorie. But in Indonesia, it's still a priority. So when you look at in a kind of like environmental point of view, one of my concerns is that I don't kind of like so much concerned with our road. It's kind of like what it is to MP3I. But my concern so much is the what is this power plant coal fire, because Indonesia is one of the largest producers for coal, and mainly low rank coal. So and that will be used for us too, and could be like a country like India. So environment thing would be kind of like, I don't really kind of like expect that will be kind of like quite high in terms of standard. Then the questions again, also raised by other speakers, is that whether the members of other ASEAN developed countries will participate on that. For me, it's participation, contribution, of course, a capital, and then this kind of like governance thing, environment, but also in the quality of technical. Because I think for Indonesia, we learn a lot about the 10,000 megawatt in terms of the quality. So in that sense, China should not kind of like limit it, using this machinery from based on the quality, and of course efficiency and price. Not just has to be made in China, because otherwise that would kind of like similar experience that what we experience in 10,000 megawatt. So yes, we have to put this kind of like environment standard as in a proper standard. But on the other hand, our questions for this kind of like financing would be that kind of like standard. The way I look at it would be kind of like, of course, it's lower standard than the World Bank in that kind of like environment. But the problem with World Bank too is that kind of the standard is too high, then we are not able to kind of like fulfill that standard. So if we can do that, it's kind of like more in terms of manageable standard, that will be good. And the other aspect is that should be like, especially for Indonesia, is the alternative energy or renewable energy, particularly geothermal. But China doesn't have any experience in geothermal. Either they want to be with participation of friends to be this kind of like as a founding member, would kind of be counted to kind of like to contribute this what is this development of the project in the renewable energy. That will be, kind of like our expectations to this AIB, that will be growing high, if that going into that way. So not just going the Chinese way.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Omar. Bu Maya, would you like to answer question number 2 and the last one is about the safeguard?
Yeah. Okay. First, let me just briefly answer question number 1, like about domestic political resilience. So I think the difference between what's usually on the newspapers about the Indonesians against the IMF lending, for example, is that AIIB lending, such as on infrastructure investment, will not be conditional. So it's you lend on infrastructure investment, but it's not like conditional that you have to achieve certain policy changes, right? So I think this makes a difference in terms of whether or not the parliament wants to approve this kind of lending compared to, let's say like the IMF loans, or even like the World Bank's policy or program loans. On the second questions about ASEAN Infrastructure Investment Fund, yeah, I mean, now it's a bit sidelined after the establishment of this AIIB, but I think that in terms of the scale of the capital, in terms of the scale of the project, in terms of the scale of the funding members, is just not apple to apple, because this is like, you know, big institutions that want to challenge the Bretton Woods institutions like the World Bank. And I think the ASEAN Infrastructure Investment Fund and the project that is in there can still be like part of this AIIB program, I think. And I mean, if you look at where the ASEAN Infrastructure Investment Fund is headquartered, I think it's in Malaysia, right? And you know,
I think it is EDB Secretariat.
Oh, okay. Okay, but I was just going to say that with the ASEAN and the non-ASEAN members of AIIB, I think there should be more balance in terms of managing the politics inside the institutions. I'm not sure. I think it's still like the jury is still out. We know that it's going to be China-led institutions, but hopefully with that so many founding members, there will be more balancing act within the institution. On the question on whether Indonesia actually helps to make the Chinese dream come true, I think this Chinese dreams is not like mutually exclusive, or it's not a zero-sum game with Indonesia's dream too. So we have a global maritime axis like vision. We want to be the global maritime axis, and I think with this the 21st century maritime road and then the Silk Road, I think it will also help if we can play the strategy right. I think it can also help to realize Indonesia's dreams as the global maritime axis. China is already, like this year for the first time, China is in the top 10 of biggest investors according to BKPM. So you can see that actually China's investment is coming to Indonesia, especially I think after a big visit of Jokowi to President Xi Jinping, and with this new, like the 21st century maritime Silk Road and the new Silk Road, I think it will also help to open Indonesia's access to the global market, because the scale of the visions of China to reach Africa and Europe is so big that I think it will also help Indonesia's access to the world. I think we should see this like Chinese dreams realized in AIIB should be seen as a very good thing, because it helps build like the Asian century in a peaceful way. In terms of like China wants to help the regions with investment instead of trying to capture like territories and things like that. So it's more of a positive sum game and not a zero sum game. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's my question. That's my answer.
What about the safeguard?
What is the question again?
The environmental safeguard and social safeguard. Can the AIIB meet the expectations?
Well, if you go to AIIB website, the three criteria that they want to build the institution on is clean, lean, and green. So they focus also on environment and social impacts of the projects. Of course, like again, I think as correctly said by previous speakers, AIIB needs to find a balance where the projects will be benefiting the member countries versus like environmental friendly, because yes, there are some of the World Bank projects, for example, that set very high standards on the environment, for example, in a way that, you know, like for example, like on building coal power plant that the World Bank cannot support, but is still being needed in a sense in some of developing countries. So hopefully with the balance in the membership of AIIB, there should be some balance between the benefits the project will bring versus the safeguard, the environmental and the social safeguard.
Okay, thank you. Is there any last question? Okay, please.
Yeah, thank you. I am Alain Bouillou-Lafont from the French Embassy Economic Department. I have a question regarding the positioning of Indonesia in the AIIB. It seems that Indonesia, of course, has a priority in infrastructures, but I would like to know what is our opinion about the advantages that Indonesia can get with this new development bank, especially that I think that already in Indonesia there are many financing that are already on the market, that there are many financial institutions that are financing Indonesia, and most probably the main problem is implementation in Indonesia. And also this is the first thing I want to mention. And secondly, the track record of China in Indonesia financing projects, like was mentioned before, for fast track, for example, was not so effective. And also in the first stage, it seems that Indonesia was not so much enthusiastic about the AIIB, since it was not among the first countries that was supposed to join. This position changed, it seems. And so if you have any information also of the position of the Indonesian authorities regarding this bank, that would be very interesting.
The position is very clear. We committed as member of this AIIB, but like what we had discussed is that how much that we are going to contribute. But of course, the demand for the presidents to have headquarters here, I don't think will be fulfilled unless Indonesia would contribute $5 billion. Even 5 billion is not enough yet. So that's the commitment, is no questions about that. But like what you said too, how this thing is going to be implementing, that will be very interesting. But for now, if you kind of like looking at the way that the government look, if you kind of like the investors that will come into infrastructure, it's very much looking into China. Why? It's kind of like interesting. China is also very aggressive for Indonesia. And of course, there's a lot to do with standard, with governance. You know, it's like a lot of the project is in the regional level. As you know, we are very decentralized. As you know, that when China is doing that kind of thing, they kind of like willing to accommodate the interest of the local government, whether they ask for participations in the project to have a share, for instance. We're not being able, ever for state-owned enterprises of Indonesia cannot do that, because that's the government has to decide, not the state-owned enterprise itself. But China will be able to do that kind of thing. So for that reasons, that's kind of like in terms of implementations too. I just kind of like see this 35,000 megawatt project is very much a Chinese dominated project. As usual, what I understood before was that there was no guarantee in it, but now they give a guarantee. That's why like other companies for other countries would participate to do that. So that's kind of the thing, because the standard of this kind of like governance is different. So you know, the financing for the AIIB, if you have to kind of like compete, the government they say that okay, we're not required for the guaranteed for the government, whether it's kind of like related to issued bond being issued and bought by the AIIB, or kind of like direct loan to a certain project, or kind of like syndications with Indonesians bank, for instance. They would do that. You know? So in that sense, is for Indonesia, it's kind of like facilitated too. They don't have to kind of like go with this kind of like requirements to be a fully granted. Although later on there will be a subject for what is this negotiations, and not to mention cost, because the problem is, you know, that in Indonesia is the cost is number one. If I become a project leader, so I buy a better quality of machinery, but there is available of machinery at a lower cost, I could be caught by KPK, purchased by BPK, while don't I buy the lowest price? And as you know that China is always kind of like lowest price, and despite this kind of like what we expect, that still kind of like they would like to sell their products, right? Their machinery, because they're the one who contribute that. So that's also other aspect that Indonesia is very much welcome. And usually in that sense, although in a kind of like a big picture, we expect, or I said that it's not supposed to be a substitute, but when it comes into the implementation of the project, there will be a lot of substitute. The project that should be funded by this kind of like certain multilateral agencies, or certain kind of like what is this loan from a certain country, that might not be taken over in a practical project itself. So we are taken for granted, just kind of like we are expect that there will be non-substitute, they will be complementary. In the implementation would be that way too. No, there will be kind of like a lot, because like what I said, particularly like in Indonesia, Thailand will be less, because once the central government decides, usually the local government is followed. But in Indonesia or Philippines, that's different matter. The central government could decide, by not participated by local government, they were not given the land. So that's what happened in West Java, for instance, just land only for power plant, but local government not to work. Not to mention about this project of what is this toll road, for instance. So that's kind of like what's interesting. But again, that's suitable for Indonesia, right? Because then local government would kind of like a pressure. You would like to have infrastructure, you don't want to financing that, China. And state-owned enterprises like that too. State-owned enterprises is, I get the sense the current, not get sense, it's kind of like my view, when the current state-owned enterprise minister, Ibu Rini, is very much in favor of China compared to the other. And as you know, this kind of like project that was really running now, like extensions of the Pelindo 2, the Tanjung Priok, Kali Baru, is only financed by state-owned enterprises, by Pelindo itself, and by Mandiri. How much Bank Mandiri can give? 1 trillion, 2 trillion. So this is the enterprises. Of course, if they kind of like participate with a large multinational company, they would require this governance, this thing, this transparency, this thing, but they can team up with the state-owned enterprises of China, financed by AIIB. So then all the project now, basically under MPTI at that time, or maritime now, is very much run by still by state-owned enterprise company. So in that sense, it's more in favor of that. So overall is, yes, commitment and implementation will be there. But when we talk about this kind of like quality, I would think that would be improved, but we still kind of like face that kind of like aspect in terms of quality, in terms of capacity, and sustainability of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Mahfud.
I think about the benefits of and advantage of AIB for Indonesia, I think it's very clear, because the government has a priority on infrastructure development. There is no doubt about it. And, but in reality, actually, for this year, we will rely more on state budget to support our infrastructure development by drastically reduce the energy subsidy and transform it into infrastructure development. In my projection, that AIB will be more effective after the year of 2017, because next year the establishment, and then I think 1 year is the period of adjustment, and it could be more effective after the year of 2016. That means 2017. That is my projection. And the second point I would like to add is that I think our relationship with China is getting better and better. China. Well, last time when I was in China in Guangxi, they have promoted the idea of the diamond years of China and ASEAN relationship for the next 10 years, and they call it the last 10 years is not diamond but golden years, and now they are building diamond years of relationship. So I think there is a strong impetus from China's side to maintain and to improve the relationship with ASEAN countries, and interconnectivity of ASEAN I think will be very helpful if that either can be connected to the IAB. The third point I would like to add is that one political advantage from having a good relationship with China is that there is not so much a political, nitty-gritty of human rights. I think it is not like when we have a relationship with European countries or United States. There is a kind of social standard very high, and I think this is does not exist in our economic relationship with China. I am not saying that this is good or bad, but I think we have to realize the fact that China never raised that issue when we're talking about economic relationship. So I think this is one of the advantages. I think that's all I can contribute. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is a good question, because I'm also wondering to what extent IIB will be benefiting Indonesia up to like the implementation and so on and so forth. Because as you know, like most of the infrastructure projects in Indonesia have issues not because of the financing, but more on the regulatory issues, especially land acquisition. So if you look at all the issues on infrastructure investments, like the majority of them are related to land acquisition. So again, so infrastructure investment is not only about financing, it's not only about money, although long-term financing, yes, is very much needed to be improved in Indonesia. So hopefully, like I think in order to be effective, AIIB should not only be coming with money or like loans, but also hopefully this institution can also help Indonesia build better capacity to prepare for commercially viable projects, and also, for example, prepare, for example, like state-owned enterprise to issue infrastructure bonds, prepare, pension funds to help with long-term infrastructure financing and so on and so forth. So not only from the financing side, but also from the institution side. And of course, like the more Indonesia make reforms in terms of, for example, like the land bill and with development plan, for example, so the case in point is the Cilamaya infrastructure projects, right, that was just cut. So yeah, the more Indonesia makes institutional reforms, I think the more effective this money from the AIIB will be.
Okay, thank you. I think we have run out of time now. I think that's all. Thank you for all the speakers for your great presentation, Pak Mahmud, Pak Umar, and Dr. Maria Monica. And please give them a round of applause. Who are already coming here. As usual, we are going to send out the discussion report along with the speaker's presentation to your email. However, if you do not receive it, please feel free to download it on our website, www.thcasean.org. So, thank you for coming. We look forward to seeing you in our upcoming events. Good afternoon.
All the